I was quiet growing up, and in the comment section of my second grade report card, it reads, Haney needs to be encouraged to continue to participate in discussions and answer questions. Haney needs to participate in oral work, particularly in reading, social studies, and science, so basically everything. Her written work is fine. In fact, this was a predictable part of my report card growing up in most of elementary school. My lack of voice was usually coupled with comments about how I worked hard, how much I improved, how neat my handwriting was, and how delightful I am to have in class. And of course, I can't help but notice that neatness, cooperation, compliance, and diligence are all tropes about Asian Americans. So I was hyper aware of difference, as I was one of the few Asian children attending my K 5 elementary school. I was placed in an ESL pull-out program from kindergarten through third grade, even though I think I was proficient in both English and Korean. As a child, I was embarrassed by atypical cultural ways that seemed so far away from the norm. My parents didn't speak English very well. My dad would sometimes pick me up in his mailman uniform, which I was constantly embarrassed by. My parents never I told myself I wasn't going to cry. This is not happening. My parents never chaperoned field trips. My father worked during the day. My mother worked at nights. They rarely came to school events. They hardly talked to my teachers because of language barriers. They were not PTA president or in charge of bake sales or organizing class parties. And while some children at school want their families, their cultures, and their experiences to be visible, I often wanted invisibility. And at school, my experience felt out of place, and my tendency was to keep things hidden from my peers and teachers. School was not a space where I wanted to be vulnerable or open. School was a place where I kept my head down, did my work, and tried my best to go unnoticed, trying desperately to fit in. I spent so much time and energy trying to erase my differences and make excuses for my culture. And I think many of us will continue to try to navigate the tensions between cultural preservation and cultural progress, right? Keeping your history and identities intact while still moving forward with the hopes of a better, richer, fuller life that your parents and those who came before you worked so hard for and in many cases died for. So in this process, I want to recognize the sacrifices on all of our behalf, the very real struggles and tensions that happen within our own families, the cultural rituals that made our homes distinct and unique, the abundance, even if not materially, that filled corners and spaces, the seemingly weird cultural practices that you always made excuses about. But somewhere in the midst of this, somebody, a figurative report card maybe, told us that we need to participate more and be comfortable with trying to be normal, right? So I want to end with my parents immigrated to the US with little money, no family, and perhaps the hopes of an American dream. They worked blue-collar jobs most of their lives. Both are retired from the US Postal Service, which might be obsolete very soon, but also attempted to start several small businesses along the way. My mom eats Korean food basically 3 times a day, and occasionally, and I'm not trying to say this to rip off Beyonce, but we would go to Red Lobster on special occasions. It was expensive and fancy, and it wasn't Korean. So every time we went, it was special. So despite economic struggles, my parents actually took us on road trips. We had a tent that we stayed in across several different campgrounds across the US, and later we graduated to an RV that we drove across the country. We actually did go to Disney World, but not on a Disney cruise or a resort or even a low-key hotel, but in an RV, stayed at a campground, and in my eyes, it was still, and this is like not a coincidence, it was still magical, right? Because, I mean, Disney is magic to young kids. I would be lying, though, if I said our lives were always magical. We definitely had tough times, but in the struggles and tensions that overtake most of us because we are immigrants, minorities, and outsiders, it's easy to forget our magic because we walk into rooms and can't help but wonder if you're the minority hire, the representative for person of color, that one from the uneducated family that makes for a good story. And people remind us how special we are because we made it, or give us looks that we're supposed to be the hope of our race, class, gender, identity, citizenship. James Baldwin once said, "I walk into a room and everyone there is terribly proud of himself because I managed to get to that room." But I encourage each of you to walk into rooms knowing that you belong there. Or as Yolanda Seeley Ruiz always reminds me, and I can't see her because I'm so short, she always reminds me, this is our time. You are not conditional. You are not here to make other people feel better about their progress. You do not exist for other people's benefit, but you just basically are here. So I honor all of you who are here and have arrived, and I hope this helps you center your story to rewrite comments on report cards on what other people think of you, and that you revel in the magic that comes with being different.